It's hard to believe the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion originally released almost 20 years ago. In 2006, Bethesda's sprawling open-world RPG captured the imagination of so many of us, offering a vast world that felt genuinely alive at the time. Whether it was stepping through the gates of the Imperial City, working your way through dark dungeons, or stopping because you violated the law.
Stop! You violated the law!
Now with the release of the Oblivion Remaster, that experience has been given a kickstart once again. But what's remarkable is how the remaster approaches its task. Not by tearing everything down and rebuilding it from scratch, but by respecting what was already there. It doesn't try to modernize Oblivion into something it was never meant to be. Instead, it smooths out rough edges, brightens the colors, and invites players to see the world again, both as they remembered it and as they may have never seen it before. In this video, I want to explore why this remaster works so well, what it gets right about handling a game from the mid-2000s, and how it offers something special not just for returning fans, but for an entirely new generation of players. One of the first things that stands out about the Oblivion Remaster is how restrained it feels. Now that might sound like faint praise in a world of flashy remakes and overhauled definitive editions, but here, restraint is a virtue. The visual upgrades are obvious from the start. Environments are sharper, with high-resolution textures and improved lighting that brings new depth to familiar places. The forests of Cyrodiil always looked lush and vibrant in memory, but now genuinely feel alive with stunning god rays and lighting effects. Cities like Skingrad and Anvil look cleaner, more detailed, but not fundamentally different. It's the same world, only clearer and a little more vibrant. Character models and animations, while not strictly the same in some regard to the original experience, still have that slight jank to them, which Todd Howard diplomatically put in the announcement.
You want to keep those bones in place. You want some of that old charm.
But now animations and characters feel like they have weight. They feel like they're reacting, and they have been updated to a more modern standard, while maintaining that familiar feel. The UI has also seen a light but welcome overhaul. Menus, inventory screens, and maps are sharper, easier to look at, and properly scaled for modern resolutions. Yet the underlying structure remains the same. The remaster doesn't try to retrofit Oblivion into a game it was never designed to be. It respects that players are coming here because it's Oblivion, not in spite of it. For anyone who's tried to replay the original version of Oblivion on a modern PC with modern hardware and resolutions, getting it to work properly is almost a project in of itself, with numerous mods and patches having to be put in place for it just to hold together in its perfectly janky engine. I've tried a couple of times in the past to get Oblivion to play nicely with my system, but it almost was never worth the effort of actually getting it to work. Even if it did launch in the right resolution, I'd still have random crashes and all sorts of issues piled on top. Now, thankfully, the remaster solves all of that. It's available, it's somewhat stable, and it's ready to play straight out of the box. Loading times are faster, frame rates are smoother, and crashes are far less frequent if they happen at all. That sounds like a small thing, but it matters more than you think. Instead of spending hours adjusting settings, installing fan patches, and dusting off old hardware, players can just sit down, start the game, and play it with a whole extra set of rigmarole to put up with. The big change with this remaster, of course, is the fact that it's not in Bethesda's own engine, which it was originally built on, and that they're still using for the most recent work, like Starfield. Yuck. But now it's on Unreal Engine 5, which means it's arguably more stable compared to the duct tape and string holding together the Creation Engine. I've seen people say that Unreal Engine is not suitable for a game like Oblivion. It's lost its charm, its soul, and some other nonsense. And people were saying why couldn't it have just been built on the updated Creation Engine? To which I say, absolutely not. If Bethesda had remastered this game on that engine, it would not have been nearly such a huge success that we're seeing right now. Because to tell you the truth, their engine is no longer suitable for modern games. It's simply out of date and needs to go. If they started moving more of their releases to Unreal, we'd see a lot more stability and favourable views coming back to Bethesda. And there's a tendency when remastering older games to try and fix everything. Animations get smoothed out, voice acting gets redone, which it has in this case in some areas. Mechanics are tightened up. Sometimes that's necessary. Other times, it strips away the character that made the original special. Oblivion's remaster wisely avoids this trap. The original janky character of Oblivion is still here, except for lockpicking. I wouldn't have hated them if they replaced that. But they could have just easily have updated magic, leveling, item conditions to Skyrim systems, but thankfully they didn't. You could argue that the mechanics in Oblivion are too simple in some regard, not as expansive or modern, but then I ask you to look at the magic system of Oblivion. It is so much more depth and so much more level compared to Skyrim. Please, we need that system in the next Elder Scrolls, please. But yes, you could argue that the mechanics in Oblivion are too simple in some regard. But that's what you do if you're remastering a game. You don't gut the entire experience and transplant in a new one. They've kept it simple. Oblivion's rough edges weren't accidental flaws, they were part of the experience. They gave the world personality. They made encounters unpredictable, memorable, and sometimes unintentionally hilarious.
Snow. We need more snow. Can't have enough snow.
Indeed.
Watching an NPC enthusiastically sprint into a wall mid-conversation was frustrating at the time, but sure, years later, it's kind of the memory that makes people smile when they talk about the game. The remaster chooses not to sand down every oddity. Instead, it treats them like part of the landscape, everything you learn to live with and even appreciate. It's not about pretending the game was flawless. It's about recognizing that even flaws can have value when they're part of something meaningful. One of the strangest things about playing the remaster is how it simultaneously feels familiar and unfamiliar. You know the world, you remember the cities, the quests, the sense of freedom, and yet it feels different enough that you don't quite know what to expect around every corner. It's a little like revisiting your childhood home after many years. The walls are still there, the streets still wind the same way, but everything feels a little smaller, a little sharper, and tinged with that kind of dreamlike nostalgia. The visual updates make old locations feel more alive. The improved lighting alone transforms the way environments feel. For me personally, playing through the remaster wasn't just about replaying an old game. It was about reconnecting with a certain feeling. The sense of possibility that Oblivion inspired all those years ago. That feeling that anything could happen if I just kept walking in a different direction. And while for me, Oblivion wasn't my first experience with Elder Scrolls, it was the first experience I had with an RPG of its scale that I actually sunk in a huge amount of time with. And with this remaster, while I don't remember everything about Oblivion, every so often I turn a corner or start a quest, and there's that feeling of familiarity that I know what happens. But it also feels like a brand new experience once again. I guess if you don't really play a game for nearly 20 years, that's bound to happen. There's a peculiar magic in revisiting something you once loved, or perhaps even still love. It's not just about memory, it's about feeling a part of yourself wake up, remembering something you didn't even realize you had forgotten. Playing the Oblivion Remaster taps into that magic in a way that's difficult to put into words. One of the most striking things about playing the remaster is how quickly familiarity and surprise start to intertwine. You start the game, you recognize the opening sequence immediately, the prison cell, the secret passageway, the Emperor's words. You know what's coming. You know the tutorial dungeon like the back of your hand. And yet, when I stepped into the open world for the first time, I paused. After blitzing through the opening segment, I finally felt myself slowing down, admiring the landscape, feeling like this was how it looked to me all those years ago. But I know it didn't. Even though I'd gone through the first dungeon so many times before, I never rushed it. I started looking at it again, noticing all the little details I may have either forgotten or never even saw. And it was at this moment I realized I'm not just replaying some old game I had played a million times over, I was rediscovering it. There's another side to this remaster that's easy to overlook if you grew up with Oblivion. For a lot of players today, especially younger players, Oblivion is ancient history. I hate to say it, but it is. We're old now, guys. It sucks. Many of them grew up with Skyrim as their first Elder Scrolls experience. Some may have never even heard of Oblivion beyond vague references and memes about "Stop right there, criminal scum." For those players, the remaster is something completely new. This isn't a return to a beloved classic. It's a first encounter with a world that shaped the game that they already know. And it's a game that shaped the modern RPG landscape. And in that sense, the remaster isn't just about preserving a memory, it's about keeping Oblivion fresh and alive, allowing new players to see where games like Skyrim came from, and to experience a different flavour of Bethesda's design philosophy. Oblivion obviously feels distinct from Skyrim, in ways that are worth preserving. It's brighter, more eccentric, and less gritty. And while Skyrim refined the Elder Scrolls formula into something a little more polished and cinematic, Oblivion still carries the raw enthusiasm of a studio reaching for something they'd never done before. That energy is worth sharing, and thanks to the remaster, it's now more accessible than ever. The Oblivion Remaster isn't perfect. It doesn't fix every minor annoyance, doesn't transform the game into something modern audiences would expect from a 2025 release. But that is exactly why it works. It isn't trying to erase the past. It's trying to make it easier to step back into it, to see it clearly, to appreciate it for what it was and still is. It respects players who loved Oblivion when it was new, and it welcomes players who'd never had a chance to see it before. It doesn't apologize for its age, it embraces it. In an industry where remasters often feel like quick cash-ins or clumsy overhauls, the Oblivion Remaster feels thoughtful. It's not just a technical upgrade, it's a whole overhaul to remember, to rediscover, and to experience something that's still worth playing. It would have been easy, almost tempting, to rebuild Oblivion from the ground up using Skyrim as a template for a format. Start fresh, modernize the mechanics, brand new voice acting entirely, new quest lines, a whole new coat of paint. But doing so would have risked losing what makes the original so special. The remaster doesn't aim for perfection, it aims for faithfulness. Yes, the textures are sharper, the lighting is richer, the world feels more solid, but the charm, the strange little awkwardnesses, the moments of unintentional comedy, they're still there, quietly woven into the fabric of the experience. And that's important, because nostalgia isn't about perfection, it's about connection. It's about the way a slightly janky animation can make you smile. Not because it's technically impressive, but because it reminds you of the hours you spent exploring a world that felt endless. The remaster preserves that feeling. It doesn't try to convince you that Oblivion was flawless. It simply invites you to remember why you loved it anyway. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed that content and want to see more, please remember to hit that subscribe button and hit the like button as well, so I know you enjoyed it. Check out the links in the description below to see my merch, access to Discord, and even if you want to support this channel, consider becoming a member. It really helps me out and you get to access certain exclusive videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.